themselves, hey, this is a great experience, will look good on my CV. As I get in further, then eventually they will pay me, and that could happen. But it's with hope and a wish rather than anything else. And the company's saying, hey, it's great, this doctor's helping us out, that's really great value for us. We don't have any money, so let's keep going. And so can you see how this narrative starts to self-perpetuate? The doctor gets pissed off, unhappy, starts to move away, and then goes on to the next company. And the initial company goes, well, I got one doctor for free. So you can see where this is going. The show that ensures that you can step into high value, non-clinical, impactful roles with purpose, with power, and with pay. And talking about pay, we are going to be talking about working for free. Yes, working for free. So if you're at an early stage in your career, in industry, you need to get the foot in the door, right? Right. And how do you get your foot in the door? An opportunity comes by, a startup company, and you're thinking, hey, they don't have any money. I really want to help them. I want to get the experience. This will look good on my CV. Everyone says you have to start from scratch because I'm starting from the beginning. Once they see my value, they'll offer me something. Hey, I've seen doctors who have managed to get on boards for companies without a single penny, again, promise that same narrative, and on the guise of, if the advice you give us is valuable, then when we raise, we'll pay you. So this has to stop, everyone. This has to stop. This narrative has to stop. This practice has to stop, because this is how, as doctors, we continue to undervalue ourselves. So today, I'm going to talk about how to avoid falling in the working for free trap and actually get paid for your value. And understand that working for free at the beginning can be a strategy, but only if it's done smartly and with a plan. So if you're someone that is here to earn and be valued for what you bring, then keep listening. So welcome. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about this in particular is because it comes up all the time in our Doctors in Industry program. I hear it, I read it on LinkedIn, and it usually shows up like something like this. So a startup company is looking for doctors to help advise, or to write articles, or even just to have a coffee, endless coffees, right? All very harmless and innocent, right? Because they're generally looking for advice. And as doctors, that's what we do. We bring advice, we want to help people. But what happens? So more coffees, more consulting, and consulting is simply giving your advice on a product or a service, and there's no money exchanged. Again, doctors are telling themselves, hey, this is a great experience, will look good on my CV. As I get in further, then eventually they will pay me, and that could happen. But it's with hope and a wish rather than anything else. And the company's saying, hey, it's great, this doctor's helping us out, that's really great value for us. We don't have any money, so let's keep going. And so can you see how this narrative starts to self-perpetuate? The doctor gets pissed off, unhappy, starts to move away, and then goes on to the next company. And the initial company goes, well, I got one doctor for free. So you can see where this is going. If we were barristers, there would be none of this happening, right? And so let's talk about why, as doctors, we've normalized undervaluing ourselves. We've normalized essentially working for free. And that all comes from our institutional workings as doctors. So why do we fall into this trap? So we got into medicine to help people, right? We are genuinely there to help others. We're carers, we're caretakers, you name it, right? And we're not driven by money. If we were, we'd be doing something else entirely different. We all know that. And so the conditioning that we get from institutions or healthcare systems, whether it's the NHS, whether it's anything else across the world, this is all totally normal. It's about being here to serve, and money isn't even in the vocabulary, right? We get told what we're paid, right? We get told what we're paid, and there's always a ceiling regardless of what level you're working. And so we bring that narrative into industry, right? Because a lot of the work we do in healthcare is completely altruistic, such as quality improvements, such as staying late, such as doing other like project management or even dissertations or research or audits or presentations. All of that, if we were in industry, we would actually get paid for the time, the extra time it takes to do it. And it's seen as good training, and it genuinely is, but it is our time. And time is money in industry. And it's really important to remember that. So these kind of habits, they get transferred into industry. And in industry, people will take advantage, especially in industries such as health tech startups, where cash can be limited, especially with early stage startups, especially when they're trying to get off the ground and raise money. So how do you get out of that trap, right? I mean, we recently had a doctor who similarly actually knew what they were going into. So they knew the company didn't have much money, had a lot of conversations, had been struggling to get their first health tech gig, and thought again, hey, I can do this. I'm not very happy with not being paid, but I need to do something. And then at least I've got my foot in the door, right? But the problem with that is they were unhappy with the result. And the most important thing you need to remember is whatever arrangement you have, whether it's money, whether it's you get testimonials in return, or whether you get something, you need to be happy with the results. Business is about relationships. It's about a win-win. If you're not winning, if you don't feel like you're winning, you need to go back and serve yourself and say, this is what I want in return. Even if money is not something that's available to exchange, there's always something else that could be even more valuable to you. And the most important thing is state your value, whether it's in money or other terms. So, for example, in digital health, right? Every doctor, anything that comes out of your mouth is valuable, right? Whether it's your network, whether it's people that you know, whether it's processes that you know, whether it's the clinical elements. There's so much that actually is a huge game changer for a lot of these startup companies, right? And so it's so important that you recognize and understand, what is your knowledge worth? What is that little noggin of yours in your brain? What is it really worth to the company? So we have another doctor who was working with a tech company, and their work, their advisory, and not even for that long, a few weeks, was a huge game changer that transformed the result for this company, that later enabled them to raise 2 million, just by having that medical credibility, just by having that backing, right? And that doctor was paid for their work, and then was paid again afterwards, after they'd raised, to say, hey, thank you. And I think got some continuation of work after that, right? So what you should do when you're going in and say the other party does not have any money, you have a choice, right? And it's really important to say, this is what I'm worth. If you don't know, we have benchmarks. We talk about, again, what is it worth in relation to what the return on investment is for the company. But if they literally don't have any money and you want to work with them, you've got a few options. One is you can say limited boundaried worth. Again, your time is precious and it's something you want to do. So it could be an hour of your time that you do in exchange for a testimonial, in exchange for a referral or a few referrals, in exchange for a shout out, something like that. Boundary time, right? That's one option. Another option, which I don't necessarily recommend, especially if you don't know the founders, is there's equity. And sweat equity comes up a lot, right? And I would really not recommend sweat equity unless you know the people involved, like you actually know them very well and you trust them and you would back them 100% with your own money. Because that's essentially what you're doing. You're giving out your time in exchange for money. And the problem is with startups is that most of them, like over 90% of them, will fail in the first 2 years. So if you're someone that's like, I've got these financial goals, I want to consult in industry, you have to focus on the companies that actually have the money that they can pay you. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that doctors face in the early stages of the journey, is finding companies that genuinely have the money to pay you. Other options, especially with companies that are either low in cash flow or don't have the funds, is again, have a very scoped, defined, not longer than 6 weeks project, right? So usually we advise something that's up to 6 weeks maximum, if not 3 months, but should be priced accordingly, right? So that's a short-term engagement, or it even could be one day. So we've got one doctor in our program recently who had a consulting piece for £3,000 for 1 day's work, or 1 day's worth of work, right? It's not about how much time you spend on it. It's about the value, right? I know people that have earned 100K in an hour, right? An hour's worth of delivery. Again, the value, and this is for very high level, very highly impactful companies. If you get to a point where you've been working in a company for a while and it remains to be unpaid or lowly paid, you just have to stop. You just have to stop, right? Especially if you're unhappy, because again, your time is valuable. And really learn how to negotiate. So we've got one doctor who, in a tech company, one of two doctors in a tech company, was paid for this role. However, recognized their value quite quickly, especially as they developed through our program, and was able to position themselves from I am a doctor working in a tech company to I am helping to transform and helping tech companies to build medically valid products that they can then scale, right? Again, positioning is everything. And so this doctor managed to then double their prices because they positioned themselves as valuable, and they had a lot of interest from other companies as well. Again, positioning is everything. Being clear on the problems that you help companies solve is key. And the final bit is you need to get support, right? There are too many doctors that are literally winging it out there. Can you imagine medicine, right? I remember a doctor said to me once, I can get all of this on the internet. I can learn about leadership. I can learn about business. I can learn about, yes, you can. You can also learn about medicine on the internet. You can do it all by yourself. But what do you think would happen if you did it all by yourself? I mean, there's a good reason why medicine is regulated, but let's think of a world where medicine was not regulated, right? You could literally go and look it up online and then start practicing. But the practicing bit would be the hardest, because you've got theory and then you've got practice, and that takes time. So a lot of us went to medical school for at least 5 years. At the end of medical school, how many of us were very confident about being a doctor and actually starting on the wards, right? I certainly wasn't. It was the practice that got me confident, not the learning and the lectures, right? I remember I really only properly learned anatomy, despite learning about cadavers in year 1 of med school. I only really learned anatomy when I did my surgical exams, right? My surgical exams. That's when I got really good at anatomy. But it goes to show people, I think doctors, we underestimate how important the learning is, especially when we're doing it, not in the reading it, in the doing it. That is where we learn, right? And learning amongst other like-minded people who are also doing it. So if you are developing your careers in your business and industry, whether you're in leadership, whether you're self-employed, whether you've got an amazing business, do not do this alone, because A, it's slower, B, it's lonelier, C, you will not achieve the impact that your hard work really deserves, because your network is your net worth. You've heard me say it several times before. I'll say it again. Your network is your net worth. Right? So just to summarize, working for free is something that we've essentially, it's been institutionally kind of dug into us as doctors who genuinely want to help people, right? But that will not work in industry, because you risk being exploited. And the answer to this is really understanding your own value in industry and really positioning yourself and boundarying your free time and your free energy. And free is a really great strategy, but only done when it's limited and specifically leads to an upsell to a paid service. For example, a very common way of doing that is, say, a tech company approaches you on LinkedIn. We do have a lot of that happening with our doctors. They have an initial discovery call. They might have another one. But even that discovery call is the value. And I always say to my doctors in the program, don't worry about sharing the greatest secrets and giving them information and intel. Like, information is so easy to get these days. The biggest challenge is how to implement it. And most companies do not have implementers or people that can actually come in and sustainably give them advice, step by step, done with you advice along the way, right? So that is where the value is. It's actually implementing it in context in relation to a problem and relation to a product. That is the key. So really understanding the value and taking your services from free, sharing your knowledge, but actually upselling it to a paid service as quickly as possible. That's a skill, by the way, is important to learn and to practice. You can also offer a paid trial or a scope product, again, which is boundaried, and that does not have to be priced according to the hour. You know me, I'm not a fan of hourly pricing, values-based or premium price. And also just say no. If you're not happy, say no and negotiate accordingly. And if you are happy to do a free and paid project, remember, nothing's ever free. Your time is your value, right? So if money is not involved, then look at other ways that you can really gain the value that's boundaried, such as so many testimonials or video testimonials are even better, referrals, multiple referrals, entries into other networks, you name it. You can be as magical and creative with it as you want. And the most important thing is that you are happy. Do not tell yourself it's for your CV. Do not tell yourself it's just because you need experience, because people get paid for experience. That is the reality of it. Do you want to be one of those people? You probably do. If you are someone who is really passionate about really growing yourself and your opportunities in industry this year, then go and head over to doctorsinindustry.com. Check out our website. If you feel that this program is something that can really help you grow, then apply, and we will see you in our program if it's a great fit for you. Remember, don't do it alone. That's